I have a good friend who was challenged in college. He was a Christian going into college, but he was at a local junior college, not a Christian environment. He had a philosophy teacher, very kind of put together, smart, intelligent teacher, who challenged him on his Christian beliefs. And you know how he did it? He said, I want you to go home and I want you to read the resurrection accounts, the Passion Week, and I want you to read it in all 4 Gospels. Just isolate on that 1 week, read the resurrection accounts in all 4 Gospels, and I want you to see how different they are. Then come on back into my office and we'll talk about it. And this young Christian went home and read the Gospels, just the resurrection accounts, and was shaken by the differences. And actually, that started him on a journey to try to find out if Christianity was true at all, given how different it seemed the resurrection accounts were. Now, I had a little different story. I was 35 when I first read those resurrection accounts. And I stayed right there, and that's, of course, the biggest claim, right? Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, this is the most important truth claim of all Christianity. If the resurrection is not true, then we've been lying to you and you bought it. So I wanted to know if it was true. And I can tell you that I never flinched for a minute on the differences I saw between accounts. That didn't bother me. I had other issues, but that wasn't one of them. And I'll tell you why, because by this time, at 35, I had been working multiple eyewitness accounts for nearly a decade. And I realized early on that no 2 eyewitnesses ever agree. Ever. It could happen right now. It could happen while we're creating this tape. And do you know that you'll get 2 witnesses who will disagree about what happened 5 minutes ago? This happens all the time. As a matter of fact, when I get called out to a murder scene, the first thing I tell the dispatcher is there an officer on scene? Yes. Separate the eyewitnesses. Why do I ask them to separate the eyewitnesses? Because I don't want to get there and get 4 versions, 4 exact repeated stories, because they've been sitting around talking to each other for an hour before I got there, and they got their stories together. I expect them to come at it with some things that'll even seem self-contradictory at first, things that'll look different from the accounts, questions raised by one witness that'll be answered by the other. That's the nature of true, reliable eyewitness accounts. And once you know that, you're able to puzzle the accounts back together. It turns out that there's variation between the resurrection accounts, absolutely. And that gave me great confidence, because it's exactly the kind of variation I would expect to see when people watch something from a different perspective, even geographic perspective, but from a different set of personal histories and interests. Some people are interested in some things, and that's all they talk about when they recall the account. Some people are interested in other things. They want to make a point about those things to you, and then these things are puzzled together. That's what we should expect if the resurrection accounts are real eyewitness accounts. And yes, they vary exactly to the degree I would expect them to. By the way, if you think we're noticing this for the first time in the 21st century? You don't think that in the first century the people holding the 4 Gospels knew they were exactly as they are now? Of course they did. And they left them. Why? Because they knew these could be harmonized the way that every eyewitness account is harmonized. Look, if you want to be able to answer the kinds of objections like this that your own kids are going to face, or probably already have. Maybe they've already noticed it and they haven't even communicated it to you. They haven't even shared it with you. Well, then you better start to learn the stuff that detectives know. How to sift through evidence, how to recognize reliable eyewitness testimony, and start shifting from a blind faith to a forensic faith.